Hello everyone. Today we're going to talk about two things, Dada and an artist named Marcel Duchamp. Now Dada is an artistic movement. An artistic movement is when you have a group of artists that all have the same idea about making art. Some other famous artistic movements are Impressionism, led by the artist Claude Monet. The Impressionists believe that art should be done quickly and capture the light of a place. Another example is Cubism, led by artists like Georges Braque and Pablo Picasso, where they're trying to flatten everything out and show it from all of its angles all at the same time. Then another example, we have pop art, led by artists like Andy Warhol and Roy Lichtenstein, who like to poke fun at consumerism, at the things people buy and advertising and comic books and things like that. Now, the Dada movement that we're talking about started in Zurich, Switzerland in 1916. It was founded by a man named Zara. And Dada was more about making fun of art. It was about being silly. And it wasn't just about painting and drawing. It was an intellectual movement. It was about poetry and theater and music and all these different kinds of art. But all of them have the same idea, that art is silly and that art should not be taken too seriously. Now, the name Dada has kind of a funny story behind it. And an artist named Hulsenbeck one day took a letter opener and he slid it between the pages of a French-German dictionary. And when he opened the page, the letter opener was touching the word Dada, which is actually French for a hobby horse, like you would ride around. The Dadaists also believed in automatism, which is where we don't control what we make. We let it happen at random. They would do things like The Exquisite Corpse, where one person writes down a line and they fold the paper so you can't see it and somebody else writes a line. It's all these games that take the control out of the artist's hands. Now, around the year 1924, Dada merged into another artistic movement, which is called Surrealism. Now, as for Marcel Duchamp, Duchamp was an American artist. He had American parents, but he was born in France in 1887, and he was born to a very artistic family. His brother, the painter Jacques Villon, was a well-known painter. His brother, the sculptor Raymond Duchamp Villon, was a cubist sculptor. He made these really wild, out there images, and Marcel was a part of this artistic family. In 1903, Marcel moved to Paris, France, to study art at one of the most famous colleges in France at the time, the Académie Julian. From 1905 to 1910, Duchamp drew cartoons for two different magazines in France, the Courrier Français and L'Oreille. I probably butchered that last one. Please don't hold it against me. Duchamp's early artwork is influenced by the Neo-Impressionists and the Nobbies. We're seeing a lot of him trying to capture the light of the place in these types of paintings. Now later on, he becomes influenced heavily by the Cubist painting. So much so that in 1913, he enters a painting called Nude Descending a Staircase into the Armory Show in New York City. Now the Armory Show was a big deal. A lot of big important artists were showing their work at this 1913 show. And Duchamp's painting was not well received. It was too out there for the avant-garde and the Cubist artists. It was too Cubist. And for the realistic painters, it was just, they couldn't understand it. They couldn't wrap their brains around it. Well, following on the heels of that controversy, Duchamp stopped painting. He believed that an artist should not be locked into doing the same thing. He felt art should be spontaneous and that it should just be allowed to happen. It shouldn't be something that's formulaic. It shouldn't be something where you're following these exact same steps every time, because that gets stagnated and it gets boring, and he just didn't want to do that. So what he decided to do was he came up with this type of art called a ready-made. A ready-made is where he takes a regular object, something that he finds on the street or in the trash or in a store, and he's taking it out of that context where that it was made for and placing it in a new context where it counts itself as a piece of serious art. 2 years later, in 1915, Duchamp moves to New York City. And in 1917, he exhibits one of his most famous ready-mades, the piece that's called Fountain. And all he's done in this fountain piece is he's taken a urinal off the wall of a bathroom and he's put it on a table and he's told people, this is art. And they believed him. It's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful idea. Now in 1920, he goes even further out there with the silliness and his sense of humor. And he exhibits a piece called LHOO. And he's displaying this at a Dada exhibit in Paris, France. And this painting, as we can see, he just drew a mustache on the Mona Lisa. You get that sense of humor, that quirkiness, that silliness that's what Dada is all about. Himself and another artist named Picabia, after that 1920 show, they're responsible for bringing this Dada movement to the United States. There were other Dada artists in the United States because of Duchamp and Picabia. Now, in 1923, Duchamp basically just quits art. He does a little bit of experimenting with photography and film with a surrealist and Dada artist named Man Ray, but for the most part, his artistic endeavors are just restricted to helping organize shows. He's still helping put together shows so that other artists can show off their artwork, but he himself is no longer submitting work. What he does decide to do for the bulk of the rest of his life is to pursue mastery of chess. Chess is a wonderful game that he spent a lot of time playing with his family in his youth. This has been a short biography of Marcel Duchamp and a short introduction to the Dada movement. I hope you found it helpful. Happy arting.